After starting 3-4, Niners have taken over the NFC West with 4 straight wins.
Yep, and are sitting, just kind of in control, right, of that 3 seed because Tampa fucking lost today to the Cleveland Browns. Jacoby Brissett's last start. Stefanski pushes out, doesn't go for 2. Somehow they still win it in overtime. Pretty insane, but it's pretty clear whoever wins this division, we're doing this before the Eagles play, but even the Eagles have multiple more wins than the Niners. That's not even assuming that they're going to beat the Packers, who Aaron Rodgers, as a doctor told me Wednesday, a doctor in the loop, who said, you know what? My friend is the Green Bay Packers doctor. You know, because the elite doctors all kind of know each other. This guy's a golfer. He golfs with my brother. He said he's been telling me for a while Rodgers' thumb is all fucked up. And it kind of came out today that he can't grip it. So I would expect the Eagles to win. I don't know if the Niners can catch the Vikings, but I think it's pretty clear you win the division, which they got that 1-game cushion. They have not lost a division game. You're sitting at the 3 seed, which, I guess you probably missed the Cowboys. So you're getting like a Commanders, you're getting the Giants. Hell, you might get Seattle again. I like that group of teams that you would play as the 6-3. You would rather be the 2 because then you get to double down, right? You get 2 home games, basically. But I think it's going to be pretty tough. I'm talking about 2nd and 3rd seed. I think given where they were 3 or 4 weeks ago, being in the clear-cut 3 seed in the NFC feels pretty good. That's a home playoff game, right?
Yeah. I think, I don't think anybody should be afraid of Minnesota by any stretch of the imagination.
They got Mike White and the Jets coming up. I mean, that's a tough game.
Yeah, well, they've got some weird games coming up, actually. Minnesota, they've got a bunch of versions of because they play the Jets, playing a bunch of weird games. They play the Lions, who will test good, playing a bunch of weird games. They play the Colts, weirdos. They play the Giants, weirdos. Like they've got game. Oh, and they play the Bears at the end of the year, weirdos. They also play the Packers. So, but all that said,
Rodgers and Fields could be both on IR for those games.
I mean, I think there's a realistic chance at this point that Minnesota's 13-4.
Yeah, it feels like 12-5 is probably at minimum what they are, and the Niners don't really feel like a 12-5 team.
If they go 3-3 the rest of the way, they're 12-5. The Vikings.
Yeah, I would put them at that minimum. So yeah, 13. You're right, 13 probably 13, 12 to 13.
Which is
you start 9-2. You're going to 12 minimum, right?
Yeah, I'd prefer. Now that said, I would feel very differently about Minnesota. Do I think the Niners' ceiling is higher than the Vikings? I do. But I think playing Minnesota in Minnesota is very different than playing Minnesota at home. It's a much more challenging game to go to Minnesota. Skull, right? I mean, it's like home field advantage is going to really matter to Minnesota.
Yeah, that's a big swing game, right? Because the Niners beat the shit out of them. Now they're a different team, obviously a different coach, but the Niners benefited a lot from Minnesota rolling it. Now that was also a different time. I guess the Niners were the 1 seed in 19, right, when they went to the Super Bowl. But it is, I wouldn't say a disadvantage, but one thing that the 2 seed no longer gets a bye. So you're both playing that weekend. I was kind of looking on Thursday. I was a little toasted. And when the Patriot-Minnesota game was going on, I was trying to figure out, it's hard because 5, 6, and 7 kind of move in both conferences. It's hard to know the exact playoff matchup, who's going to be the Monday night game.
You're talking about the wild card weekend?
Like if I told you Niners Giants were playing, I would say that would have some Monday night potential because the Cowboys are also playing. You'd have you'd have the Patriots, the Jets, you'd have a lot of other games to put throughout the weekend.
So do you think it's safe to say the Niners wouldn't end up on Saturday, that there's enough weird matchups that they...
But it's also did they put the Rams and Cardinals last year on Monday night just because they're like, fuck it? Or did they think that was a sweet matchup? I don't know. I don't know the mindset on the Monday night game, but I do think you want to avoid that thing at all costs, right?
Yeah, playing on a short week. Yes.
But you got to win that game.
Yeah.
But I guess if you play Monday, you're going to be playing Sunday. But remember, the Rams played Monday night against the Cardinals, and then they had to travel to Tampa, I think at the 10 a.m. kickoff, remember? On the
Saturday?
Sunday.
On Sunday.
No, they played Sunday, but...
Did you, when you were looking at it, did it show you the networks for what the Saturday.
I just pulled up the two conferences and we're trying to figure out the
yeah.
games. Now, I wasn't thinking like ABC, CBS, Fox.
Right. Yeah. It's there was one game between two teams with winning records on Sunday. That was the Titans Bengals game. That was the only game in the
I saw
league.
you tweet that. Yeah.
Well, it's like this every week. It's like if you get 4 games between teams with winning records right now, I think just thinking back over I've been checking every week for like 4 or 5 weeks. I think the most we've had is 4.
I will say this though,
and there were no buys this week. Like everybody's playing.
I only really watched overtime Seattle Raiders, so I can't claim to watch that, but I've watched the Raiders all season long. And watching the Saints, who were both 3-4 win teams. Like you watch those two teams, they do have a lot of good players in a lot of positions, right? I think there are going to be some teams this year that win 5 or 6 games, and you go, that's actually not like just some shit team. Like I've seen the Niners go 5-11 and been like, that team was fucking terrible. And I like the Saints, they're going to win 6 games this year, and they probably go, we weren't as shitty as our record. Quarterback play, some games. Now they don't have it's a disaster. Same with the Raiders, right? The Raiders are going to end up going at best 7-10, 6-11, and they go, God, how the fuck did that happen? It's like, well, you lost a lot of basically field goal games, right? Like 3 swing games you lost, and that's the difference of going 7-10 and 10-7 or 9-8.
Joe says there's 6 games next week with teams with winning records. Yeah, my point in doing that stat is not even – I'm not saying when I wake up and I check it like all the games are going to suck today. For example, Arizona, bad record, right? They lost, crazy game, 4-8, Chargers. I knew when I checked the schedule today that would be a game worth watching, right?
But the Chargers are a good example, right? They don't count because they're 5-5, right?
But there wasn't even a game between two teams that are 500 today.
Yeah,
if I lowered the bar to 500 teams,
I hear what you're saying.
But whatever, I'm not saying it's not fun football. I'm just saying it's like what made me think of it when you're talking about projecting the postseason. There's just not 7 quote unquote. There are years where you're like, there's 8 playoff teams in each division. This is not one of those years, right? Tampa Bay at 5-6 is still in first place in the South.
Well, it's why my only take, like next week is
Washington 7-5. They play the Giants twice in a row coming up.
Yeah, that's going to be a big game for the Niners, obviously. But my only thing with this game was like, just find a way to win. Find a fucking way to win.